Premier League is returning and the world will be watching. And of course it will be a very different event to what we're used to, but there's no doubt that this is a hugely symbolic moment, an important step forward in our careful journey back towards normality. Players back in their place of work and a boost for our football-loving nation. And we've worked really hard with football authorities, police and medical experts to get to this point. But we do need fans to play their part too. So please look after your fellow fans and your communities by watching from home. To keep the home advantage, support from home. Now, all 92 remaining Premier Leagues will be shown, Premier League games will be shown live on TV. And I'm delighted that I and others managed to work hard to get a third of them on free-to-air channels. Friday will be the first free-to-air with Norwich v Southampton. Then an important day on Saturday, that will be when we have the first ever Premier League game on the BBC, followed by the Merseyside derby, again free-to-air on Sunday. And there'll be extended highlights of all the games free-to-air, so you won't have to miss a single goal. Our sportsmen and women have set some incredible examples during this pandemic, using their profiles to support worthwhile causes across the United Kingdom. England's men and women cricket teams have donated £500,000 towards charitable causes. Rugby League's Cheshire West Bank Bears have delivered food and parcels to the elderly. And of course, the England and Manchester United footballer Marcus Rashford has made the front and the back pages for the very best of reasons, highlighting the struggles facing many families during this difficult time. But that is, of course, in addition to the fantastic work he's been doing, helping to feed millions of children through the Fair Share charity. And the last 3 months really have demonstrated that immense power of sport. It brings us together through kindness and common humanity. And actually, I was struck by this last week when I teamed up with His Royal Highness, the Duke of Cambridge, and some of Britain's biggest sports stars on mental health awareness. We chatted about the need to deliver generational change in perceptions and develop tools for good mental health, whether you're a sports star at the top of your game, or a junior just starting out, or a fan going through a difficult period. And as we get sport back, I really think this is a great opportunity for all of us to be much more open about talking about mental health. And the sports recovery was never, though, just about elite sports. I know that countless people are itching to get back to their gyms, their leisure centres, their five-a-side leagues, and all the other normal fitness activities. So we're working closely with the sector to get grassroots and community sport back up and running as soon as it is safe to do so, with an aim of the start of July at the very earliest. And as we continue our efforts to get children back to school, I want to focus on the role that sport can play in improving young people's physical and indeed their mental health. So today is an important moment in our recovery. The return of elite sport has provided a model to follow, one which is based on close partnership, working with government, sport and the medics to bring it back safely. But it's a model that we're also applying to other much loved and much missed parts of our economy, in particular the performing arts. Now, I know they face enormous challenges, particularly given the impact of social distancing on live venues. And I really am looking hard at how we can address those challenges. Over the past few weeks and months, I've been talking extensively and intensively with people from across the UK's cultural sector to try and find a way through these issues. From some of our most creative directors and producers to those running our greatest museums, theatres and music venues. And an important part of all of this is to get performances back up and running again. Now, we've made a lot of progress through the Cultural Renewal Task Force and indeed the Entertainment and Events Working Group, which sits within that. However, it is clear from all of this that we do need greater flexibility to overcome some of the very specific and practical obstacles to the return of live performance. So that's why, over the next week, we will be convening experts in a targeted way, bringing together our leading performers in theatre, choirs and orchestras with medical experts and advisors. And the idea is that they will work together in detail to develop that roadmap which is so badly needed to performing safely, with a particular focus on piloting innovative ideas that may permit live performances. I know how essential our theatres, our music venues and the performing arts are to our wider cultural ecosystem. Culture is our calling card, it's respected around the world, and I am determined to work with them and across government to support it and to preserve its world-leading position. Today's return of live football represents a significant milestone, but I hope it's just another step towards normality, to be followed by many more in the months to come. Thank you. So with that, I'm now going to turn to the first two questions, both of which we are going to see on this screen, and then I will respond to them. So the first comes from Laura in Eastbourne, and she asks, theatres around the country still remain closed with no reopening date in sight. How do you expect employers to keep their staff employed and to contribute to the job retention scheme who are unable to open and have zero income? Well, Laura, look, I hope I addressed some of that in my opening remarks. The first thing that we've done to support theatres is the job retention scheme. Without the job retention scheme, literally thousands of people in theatres would have lost their jobs already. Because of the job retention scheme, the government has spent tens of millions of pounds ensuring that those people can keep their jobs. We've also introduced schemes like, for example, deferral of VAT payments and business rate deferrals and indeed business rate reliefs. Of course, I know that for theatres in particular, as we open, and we've set the challenging target of the 4th of July, it's going to be exceptionally difficult for theatres to open consistent with social distancing. And that is why I continue to have discussions across government to see what further support we can give theatres during this challenging time. So hopefully that answers the first question. We are now going to go on to the second question, and this is from Val from Wetherby. She asks, what is the policy and strategy to allow visitors to relatives in care homes whose mental health has been severely impacted by lockdown, whilst at the same time protecting vulnerable residents? So look, first of all, I know Val, and I don't know whether you have got family in care homes. I know what a terribly difficult time this has been for people who have families in care homes, not being able to see them in person. And the government really is aware of this challenge. I think it was essential that we protected people in care homes by not allowing that visiting to happen. Of course, I know that is something that my colleague, the Health Secretary, is continuing to work through, and as soon as it is safe to do so, we will ensure that that can happen. I really do understand your desire to be able to do so. So those are the two questions that we've had from the public. We're now going to turn to Hugh Pym from the BBC. Hugh, are you there?
Yes, thank you very much indeed. A couple of questions, if I may. First of all, more than 1,500 paediatricians have written to the Prime Minister saying they are very concerned that many pupils are not back in schools and are calling urgently for a plan to get them back. What's your response to that? And secondly, there were some ministers at the beginning of the crisis who were rather critical of professional footballers, leading footballers for not taking pay cuts. Has that view changed, and are you now praising them and the Games authorities for getting back from today and providing entertainment to fans?
Well, two very different questions there, Hugh. I'll try to address each one of them. First of all, on the plan to get schools back. Look, it's vitally important that we get children back to school. I know my own daughter is back at her local state school, and millions of, well, hundreds of thousands of kids, over 600,000 kids across the country are back at school. We've managed to get back children in reception and year 1 and indeed in year 6. Of course, we want to go further, and that's why from September we want to ensure that all schools are back. I do think it's important, though, as part of this, that we really reassure parents that it's safe for their kids to go back. And I've been really heartened by the incredible hard work that I've seen from teachers up and down the country who've worked so hard in difficult circumstances to get kids back to school. I do think it's a bit of a shame that their unions, and indeed it appears the leader of the Labour Party, is not also providing them with that kind of backing and support. In relation to professional footballers, I think it's wonderful that we've got football back. And we've worked really hard with the professional footballers and others on this. And then particularly I pay a tribute to Jonathan Van Tam, Professor Jonathan Van Tam, who's done an awful lot to reassure footballers about the safety of all of this. And I think it's entirely right that we should praise footballers for the role that they're playing in ensuring that we're able to get back to normal life as before. I think the comments you're referring to were in relation to the access to the job retention scheme. On the job retention scheme, I've always been clear, and I think most of the clubs have followed this, that you should only access the job retention scheme if you can't afford to use other means. And I think they followed that example. Do you have any follow-ups there, Hugh? Yes,
on football, once again, do you have any concerns about fans gathering at grounds, and do you have any message to them? And secondly, what about lower leagues and the financial plight of many clubs? What support or assistance can you give there?
Well, those are two important points. First of all, and I hope viewers at home would have heard this message at the beginning of this. It is so important. The risk here would be if people congregate outside stadiums. It is really important to stay at home. That is an important part of saving lives in this period. We do not want people to inadvertently spread the coronavirus by being outside stadiums. But I must say that the British people, and I think fans have shown remarkable good and common sense. They know that they shouldn't be doing this, and I really don't think they will. An important part of this has been negotiating those free-to-air matches, which will give people the opportunity to watch a large number of those matches live at home if they don't have subscriptions, and indeed to see extended highlights for the rest if they don't have subscriptions. The second point, forgive me, Hugh, what was the second point that you raised?
About lower league clubs.
Yeah, so lower league clubs. I think throughout all of this, I think the best thing we can do for football is to get it up and running again. So, of course, by getting the Premiership and the Premier League and the Championship back up and running, that is releasing funds that would otherwise have been forgone. Those clubs would have had to have made penalty payments to the broadcasters. So that gets more money into the sports. And, of course, that can then be shared through the football pyramid. I hope, and actually the next stage in reopening, so we've had 3 stages in reopening. The first stage was socially distant training. The second was contact training. The third has been the return of live sport behind closed doors. The fourth stage will be international competition. And the fifth stage will then be about seeing whether it's safe for fans to return to stadiums. Just today, we've had very productive discussions about this. I would really hope that by the return of the new season, we might be in a position whereby some fans could start to return to stadiums. And I know that would be another important part of restoring the financial position of clubs. Thanks for those questions. And now over to Robert Peston from ITV.
Secretary of State, can you tell us whether there is any chance that within a year we will be back in stadiums, in theatres, in entertainment venues? And if you can't, what can you do to stop the hundreds of thousands of job losses that look set to come within weeks, long before the coronavirus job retention scheme ends in October, as Cameron McIntosh's announcement of redundancies today shows all too clearly?
Well, thank you for those questions, Robert. I should also give you a follow-up to a question you asked me when I was on your show last week. I'm pleased to say that Royal Parks are starting to open their loos. Every Royal Park, I think, has got at least one loo open, and more will be opening up.
Question.
In relation to the other points you raised, look, I really want, and I understand the need for all of these venues to return with people in them, and indeed eventually without social distancing. But that can only be done if the public health allows it to happen. And I think you see different scenarios. So I think in relation to stadium, where people are outside and they're much bigger and there's more scope for social distancing, it may well be that you could do that sooner. I know particularly with the performing arts and theatres, when you're doing that in a confined space, there are greater risks there. This is why we've given it a lot of attention. The first step is that we have extended the job retention scheme through to the end of October. But of course, I'm continuing to work with everyone across industry to look at what further support we can give them, indeed, across government. And you mentioned Cameron McIntosh. Cameron McIntosh is just one of dozens of people that I've spoken to on a one-to-one basis. So I'm very familiar with the challenges that are being faced, and we are working to resolve them. Any follow-up?